Hello YouTube, I'm Pilot Stud and welcome to my review of the payware Embraer Run or Embraer 110 by NextGen Simulations. As you can see, this aircraft is a small commuter turboprop. Today I'll be running through the main features of this aircraft and telling you if it's worth it or if you should spend your money elsewhere. First of all, I'd like to say a massive thank you to NextGen Simulations for providing me with a press copy, but as you guys know, these reviews are always my own opinion, no bias here. First of all, let's take a look at the interior and then we'll hop into the cockpit. So if I'm being honest with the interior, it's nothing groundbreaking. It's not like the best interior I've ever seen, but it's also not terrible, and I feel like this is going to be the general theme with this airliner. The texturing on the propellers are nice, and you can see all those beautiful rivets, and there appears to be some sort of 3D effect, so it's not the worst, but I certainly wouldn't call it the best. Now, with this add-on, you don't actually get one aircraft, you get 3 variants of the aircraft. 2 passenger variants and 1 cargo variant. There's not too much difference here, it's basically just how the aircraft looks in terms of windows. Now, first of all, let's talk about price, because I think that's a pretty big issue with this aircraft. It comes in at €35, which for me is pretty steep, and I think if they lower the price down by €10 or so, they'd be onto a winner. So just bear in mind that this does cost $40, which to me is very steep. You guys may disagree down below, but I think that's a bit too expensive for what you get. You've got to remember you can get the COJ from Aerosoft for $10 more. And that, my friends, is really worth it. So comparing those two, I mean, there is a mountain of difference. It's not that the aircraft isn't worth money, it's certainly of payware quality. It's just I do think that price is a bit steep. But regardless, let's hop into the cockpit now. So here we are in the cockpit, and yeah, as I said at the start of this video, for me personally this aircraft isn't bad, but it's not fantastic. The cockpit in my eyes is good. They've clearly put some detail here, they've clearly spent a lot of effort on it, but for me it does remind me quite a bit like X-Plane 10, and you've got to remember this is Microsoft Flight Simulator. However, don't get me wrong, most of the buttons work, and that really does boost it up for me, because I haven't found that too many systems in this aircraft don't work. There is one system, the Bendix King, but that's not a massive deal. Just this screen down here, but I mean you do get the Garmin GPS GNS 530 and 430, which is always nice to have. Looking at the instruments, we get a nice blend of analog and digital instruments, which I really like. I'm always quite a sucker for having some nice analog instruments in the cockpit. The yoke is really well done as well, works perfectly with my honeycomb yoke. The throttle quadrant in the middle with your mixture and your propeller control, yeah, it looks nice. I can't really complain about this, it looks pretty good. Now on the sim market, people have been moaning about instrument texturing. For me, it's perfectly fine. I think the resolution's pretty good. Most of the buttons work as well, as I said, from the test lights to the fuel pumps, everything works. Even hot mic, which I guess isn't really needed on Microsoft Flight Simulator, but there we go. Let's get this aircraft started up now. And I've actually included a checklist with Microsoft Flight Simulator, which loads of payware companies have forgotten about. There's also some fantastic manuals as well, which should guide you along. Just turning off the battery now so we get rid of that horrible noise. I should have turned it off really. I did turn it off with my panels, but now you get a feel for what the aircraft sounds like with nothing running, and it's dead silent. Maybe I'd like some noises here, because you'd probably find that some outside noise would be in the cockpit. But anyway, let's get this aircraft started up now. So we're going to go back up to battery. I normally use my panels for this, so you can swap over to external power. You can see we do get some things turning on. We don't get the Garmin's turn on, but we do get some of the instruments pop up. But regardless, let's swap back over to battery. There we go, battery comes on. We get the noises. A bit lawnmower for me, I've got to be honest, but they do sound like that, so that's kind of true to life. We get generators on now. Yeah, I'm not 100%, I'm not familiar with this aircraft at all. I wasn't aware of its existence before we hopped into it, so I mean, I'm going to start it up wrong, but I'm always learning. There we go, we've got one engine coming on now. It was unintentional, but there we go, we've got engine 2 popping on. And I guess we're just going to repeat the same with engine 1 and get that on. And there we go. First engine's coming on. Both engines are on now, and you can see from the outside the aircraft does sound really good. I'm having to shout a bit because they're coming out of my headphones quite loudly, But from the outside, the aircraft sounds pretty nice in my opinion. Of course, I haven't actually had any real life experience with this aircraft, so I couldn't tell you 100%. Everything in the cockpit is lit up now. We've got our transponder down here, radio panel, and two GPSs. I think they're just from default Microsoft Flight Simulator. I don't know if there's any difference, but yeah, they work as you'd expect. This actually, the top bit here reminds me of the early 737 panel or 727 panel, because instead of having the autopilot up here in the early 737s, you had the fire switches, which, you know, there's some little aviation trivia for you. But anyway, let's get away now. Move parking brake, you get some sounds there. We'll give the aircraft a full mixture. I should have gave that in startup, but there we go. You can see the engines rev up a bit more. I guess we can swap from ignition now. I take it that's what we'll do. So, is it these ones? Not that one. And hopefully, there we go. Noise changes a bit. Engines rev up a bit more. Let's get away now. So, taxiing out of Male, I have to say, on the ground this aircraft does feel really good. Some people are reporting kind of glitches or shuddering. I'm not. I did have to sort out my sensitivity before I hopped into the plane, but after that I find it's really good on the ground. I cannot fault it. So here we are taking off. I went to the other side of the runway because I tried to take off from that side, but the aircraft didn't want to pick up, so I had to reload. I'm not too sure what happened there. I must have missed something on the checklist. There was just no power getting to the engines. But anyway, the first problem I have is, notice the sound. Our engines are on full power right now. We should be able to hear them. Hopping outside we can, but inside we can't. Now the short takeoff and landing performance of this aircraft is pretty good. You can squeeze this off or on most runways, and it picks up very nicely. In addition to that, we've got landing gear sounds and of course proper animations. There you go, you can see the landing gear come up now. And yeah, it does look very nice from the outside. Now this is the P1 variant, which is the second passenger variant, and it's in the ASA livery. You do get a good collection of liveries, which is always very nice. Just includes loads of people, but I'm sure regardless there'll be some liveries on floatsim.to later down the line if you haven't got your airline there. Now the handling of this aircraft is very good in my opinion. It's nice and responsive, although there is plenty of things to make sure you do on the checklist, so read your checklists unlike me, and I'm sure you'll have a blast. Now, the pros and cons so far. I've taken this on a couple of flights now, here in Male and of course in Ireland, and for me it is a rather complex aircraft. The systems have pretty good depth, although they are simplified of course, and not everything is in here. But the biggest problem for me is actually the sounds. Texturing, in my eyes, is fine, reflections are pretty good, but I'd really like some better sounds, because frankly, for me anyway, they're not good enough. They feel washed out and quite like a lawnmower, and yeah, that's just not how I like it. I prefer to have some really vibrant sounds, and of course realistic sounds, because it's quite unrealistic to have a cockpit with no full power engine sounds in your ears. That's a bit of a ruining factor for me really, and I'm sure it would be for many of you. It's a $40 aircraft, we should really be able to have sounds, but the developer has said that's the main thing they're working on, so hopefully we'll see an improvement of that down the line. Handling, as I said, beautiful, handles really well, minimum inputs on the aircraft, of course once you trim the aircraft anyway. Let's turn back towards Male now and see how we can land it. Now before we come into landing here, let's go back over to Ireland, where we had a beautiful scenic flight earlier today. I really do love Ireland. Donegal Airport was of course the handcrafted airport we were taking off from. Really stunning part of the world. Wasn't the best landing, but bear in mind it was my first landing, and hey, we're all not pros. We've got our flaps up now, because I did forget to bring them up. And you really can push this aircraft to the limits. That's probably my favourite thing about it. We are coming in rather high here at Male, I know, but anyway, we'll sort that one out. Yeah, we've completely fluked this landing. It's not going to be a nice landing, but hey, we're coming onto the ground now. Its landing performance is really nice. It's a really fun aircraft to land, it has to be said. Oh dear. To be fair, it wasn't horrific. I mean, we were just completely off centre. I kind of got lost, if I'm being honest. I thought we went to the wrong airport. But look how quickly this aircraft stops. And then we'll, of course, use reverse thrust. And yeah, I mean, it just stops so quickly. It really is a beautiful aircraft for short runways. Let's park up and I'll give you my final thoughts. So there we have it, guys, 2 flights in this beautiful aircraft. For me, it's a mixed bag. In some cases this aircraft is really nice, i.e. the flight model feels really good. It's a nice aircraft to pick. It's certainly quite a complex aircraft, but turboprops normally are. And not my favourite type of aircraft, I'll admit, but they're always very fun to fly. But of course, as always in these reviews, there's plenty of negatives, and the main one would be sound. I hope they really fix it soon, because it does ruin what would be a fantastic aircraft. It's just unrealistic to not have any increased engine noises when you're increasing throttle. It just doesn't make sense. I'm not too sure why they didn't do it, because that's kind of a main thing for realism in an aircraft. But anyway, I hope they improve it soon. As of right now, I would recommend it, but only if you're really into this aircraft. If you wanted a fun turboprop, then it does kind of fill a gap in the Microsoft Flight Simulator market, but it's not 100% there, so I'm not going to say steer clear of it. I do think it's a pretty good aircraft. I do think NextGen simulations are of course going to continue working on it, and hopefully we'll see some good updates down the line. But as of right now, I am probably going to give it a 5 or 6 out of 10. Nice flight model, nice exterior, pretty good textures, I can't complain about them, but the sound does ruin it. As I said, there's plenty of manuals and of course checklists. Follow your checklists, guys. It's quite a complex aircraft to handle. But there we have it, guys. The Embraer 110, including the freighter, although we haven't shown that one off today. Now, as I said, you do get a collection of liveries and of course 2 other variants. You get another passenger variant and a freighter variant, so you do really get 3 aircraft for the price of 1. But my takeaway for this video would be, if you really want this aircraft, then of course I recommend it. But if you're looking for a commuter turboprop, then I'd say wait until this gets updated, or wait for another aircraft down the line. It's a nice plane, it just needs some improvements in places, and I've pointed those out. So there we have it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe if you haven't done already. Once again, thank you to NextGen Simulations for providing me with a press copy of this beautiful aircraft. You guys know where the improvements needed to be done, so good luck with them. Once again, thank you to all of you for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed. Thank you to my business class and first class channel members. My first class members get a shout out, there you go on the screen now. But for me today, that is all. Bye bye.